Alabama back on the practice field as they get set to take on Missouri after another disappointing effort and some discipline issues in Knoxville against Tennessee. We're going to get into that right here on Cover Crimson. We'll hear from a couple of players. EG is actually on campus right now, so she's going to give us a report and hang. Thanks for being with us, guys. Like and subscribe, thumbs up. Welcome to Cover Crimson. Let's get this thing going. All right, Emily Grace McWhorter. I'm Mick Gillispie. Good to see you. Sun shining, although Alabama did lose, but it did come back up again. So good news. What was the theme like in Tuscaloosa today?
Yeah, it was great to hear from the players. It is sunny today. I'm trying to move you guys so you can see a little better. There we go. It was a good mood in practice today. You know, I was impressed with just the players that we were able to interact with. CJ Dupri was one of them in particular, and he stayed with the media for a pretty long time, and he gave some great answers. I've heard, Mick, a few times now, the TNT phrase being brought up, and that's it takes no talent. So there's a list of things that take no talent, and part of that is doing your job as you're told, right? So those little things. So that was one thing that came up a few times. We heard from Jeremy Bernard and his support of Jalen Milroe saying to me, I asked him, you know, in a previous question, he kind of mentioned that I'm always going to have his back. I'm always going to have Jay Mills back. And so I kind of followed up on that and I said, Jeremy, what are the conversations like between you guys? What have they been like, the discussion since Saturday night? And he said he's been telling him, you know, like, despite what other people think or despite what other people may say, like, I've got you. And, you know, don't get too down on yourself. Like, we're here for you. It's a brotherhood, things like that. So as far as unity on this team, I do not think that's an issue in the slightest. I have not picked up on that at all. Obviously, I know there's some, you know, discussion around Caleb Odom right now with some tweets that went out. But being in the facility today, I can confirm that all of those guys in there, they're playing for each other. Even Bray Hubbard, obviously coming in for Keon and that whole, you know, sequence of events that took place, that I want to do the best I can because that's who we are.
Well, let's play the clip of Dupri, CJ Dupri, the transfer from Maryland a couple of years ago. And he's been a regular target for Jalen Milroe this year.
You know, just really take heed and take pride in the small things, you know, small details. Don't get bored with the basics. And, you know, coming to practice every day, working your butt off every day and just doing the small things right. You know, we have TNT signs, take no talent. You know, you make a mistake out of play, you get a flag, anything, just take no talent, run to the sign, touch the sign. We got to get back into that and just, you know, accept an ownership and stuff. You know, we got to own up to it, accept it, flush and go on to the next play.
All right, there you go. The takes no talent. I feel like Alabama needs to do a lot of that. I don't know that, you know, touching a sign is going to get them there. I mean, it feels like repetition is going to get him there. One thing I heard about DeBoer when he took the job is, even though he's a really nice guy, that he was a stickler for the details, and you would do things over and over and over again until you got them right. And when I watch this team, you know, I just don't feel like they're a team that does a lot right. I mean, they do some things right, but they also make a ton of mistakes. They get a ton of penalties, and then they're undisciplined.
Yeah. So Jamarian Latham actually spoke on this today on the defensive line. And he said that they show flashes, essentially. And we had that clip as well, but they show flashes, but they have not been able to put a complete game together. He said you see how dominant we can be. And I think that's an interesting way to put it, because we've been saying that, Mick, on Cover Crimson on the next round, that we agree with him. First half against Georgia, Wisconsin, you're seeing these moments that this team is there. You know, it's not this mystical thing that, you know, Alabama isn't, you know, to the standard yet, because we're seeing it in flashes. And I think that was interesting what he said, and it goes to practice execution. So I do think that there is discipline being put out from Coach DeBoer. I don't think that is it. I don't think that this is just a lackadaisical team now and they can do whatever they want. There's something between practice and taking the field that is missing. Something that is not clicking. And call it what you want. I'm sure there's a variety of things you can say. But when it comes to practice, it seems like for the most part that Bama standard is there. It's what happens between Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Something is missing.
Well, yeah, but the season's not over yet. I mean, as disappointing as it's been losing to Vandy and Tennessee, because of the college football playoff, you know, if they get on a run and they win out, they're going to make the playoff, I think. But the problem that I feel like they have is that mentality. Like, is looking ahead. Oh, well, we got to win this one. We got to win this one. We got to win this one. At least you're hearing some of these guys say, we got to worry about winning this week.
Yeah.
And then we got to worry, like, so let's worry about this right now. And I feel like Saban taught us a lesson on this for years, that you got to respect your opponent and that you can't look past to the next team. And I feel like this year's Alabama has fallen into so many of those lessons that we were taught for years by Nick Saban. And I just wonder how they get this right.
Yeah. And I think that part of that is going to come with time. I think that we can't ignore the transitional period and things like that with the new defense, new coaching staff, etc. And, when we think back 6 months ago to that, I guess 9 months now, we're in October now? It's crazy, almost in November. When the transition happened, there was so much unknown that was about to happen with Coach Saban's departure, Coach DeBoer coming in, and then Josh Pate talks about this on his show this week, saying how there was a window when Saban retired that left the transfer portal open for Bama, but they couldn't necessarily capitalize on it. So what that turns into is you're having to keep guys there. And Malachi Moore was one of those guys that came back. Jalen Milroe, significant players. What that does is I'm curious how we'll be talking in the spring. I'll leave it at that. I think we may see a different energy from this staff and from this players, because I think Coach DeBoer will have his full hand on the program. Not saying he doesn't have that now. I think that he's in full control of this. But this offseason will be very telling as to how they right this ship. And I think that, with 2 losses, I think this is the first time Bama has had 2 losses going to November since 2007, Saban's first season. There's a lot of parallels there. And it's interesting to me to see how it's going to play out the remainder of the season. The schedule, you have LSU on the road. I'll be at that game. Excited for that. You've got Missouri this week. And I'm curious how this is going to play out. But how you right the ship, it starts in practice. It starts out there on that field. And I do think good things are happening, whether it's translated on the field or not, whether Alabama fans want to believe it. I do think inside that facility, guys are bought in. There's unity on this team. Players have, Jalen's back in terms of Jermaine Bernard. And there's an urgency that we haven't seen, or we think we haven't seen. But now, coming from the horse's mouth, there's a new sense of urgency in that building.
Yep. All right, let me play a clip of Lathan. Hear what he's.
The urgency is definitely up now, knowing that, the chances of getting into the playoff are slim than they were early in the season. So it's like now just making sure that we're doing the right things throughout the week so that on Saturday, we can go out and perform, knowing that we only got 5 ball games left.
So they kind of reiterated what you were talking about there about the sense of urgency. I don't understand why this hasn't been there all year, though. I mean,
yeah,
this team should have had a sense of urgency from the beginning of the season. I feel like that this season is starting to look a lot like 2010, where Alabama was coming off of a championship. It was probably Nick Saban's worst coaching job. I felt like the leadership on that team didn't do a good job. Greg McElroy's last season. You kept hearing things out of the locker room, like guys were like, well, you know what? We won last year, it just kind of like,
a little flat.
it's okay. Right. Before we really got the Bama standard. I mean, they won a championship, but they really didn't have that mentality that they do right now, or at least leading into the season. And with these guys, it just feels like they've got discipline issues. Obviously, Coach Saban isn't their coach, but it was trending this direction before he retired. And then now here we are, looking at, half the season gone, and we're finally like, hey, we need to get a sense of urgency, and we need to take it game by game. It just seems like they're a little bit late to the party.
Yeah, I think you make a great point about how even when Coach Saban was here, we have such short memories, right? We don't want to go back to the issues that Saban was having inside of, the Alabama football program. But I think that it speaks to this new generation of college football. I mean, with the NIL, and I don't want to, get too far into that, but you hit the nail on the head. This was trending that direction when Saban was the head coach at Alabama, and it's still going to be trending in this direction. I think from my perspective, I feel like Saban was able to preserve this team and the essence of college football like no one else. So because of that, when these cracks started, it was more obvious because it's Alabama. But I think Saban almost needs to get more credit about how he preserved what the college football was, 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, going back. And that's just not where we're at right now. And I think that, you speak of the disciplinary issues. we're not able to watch practice anymore. We were able to see, a few periods during fall camp. So I can't speak on that, but I think that going forward, the second half of the season, crazy, like we said, we're already to November basically. And Alabama's schedule, let's see, they've got Missouri this weekend, and then they've got the bye. LSU, who's after LSU?
Then they have Mercer, then Oklahoma, then
Mercer.
Auburn.
Yeah. So
At Oklahoma, by the way.
At Oklahoma, and then Iron Bowl in Tuscaloosa. And I saw some funny tweets about that game after the loss to Tennessee, and Auburn's loss against Missouri. It's going to be quite the matchup. But the second half of the season, it's there's urgency, and if Alabama can win out, obviously that would put them in a position for the college football playoffs to get in. But you start thinking, okay, what does a loss against LSU do in Baton Rouge? Okay, Oklahoma's offense has not been great. What happened? But you lost to Vanderbilt. So I think there's a lot more question marks going forward for this team. And what I'm most curious about is, will we see another first half like we did against Georgia? Will we see 2 quarters of consecutive, incredible, disciplined execution? I don't know.
Yeah. And the other thing too, going into this game, is a lot of injuries. We saw Hubbard for the first time. We saw a lot of King Mack out there. We lost Keon Sabb, who's been one of our best defenders. There's been injuries on the wide receiver front. The guys have been banged up, and I guess that's where you are this time of the year. So this game's important because you want to hit the second bye week with some momentum. You want to still be in the race. You want to make that LSU game important, and you're going to have to do it with guys that aren't necessarily starters, and they're going to have success. Now, I do have some good news, and that is Alabama, according to On3, has the #1 recruiting class, and that recruiting class got a little bit better. They flipped 4-star tight end. Gonna get it right. For this class, Marshall Pritchett from North Carolina. So that's the second flip that they've had. Remember, they had Kevonte Henry, the Mississippi State commit, and JUCO defender, one of the top JUCO defenders in the country. And some people felt like the top, edge guy. He flipped last week. So Bama's class is getting better. It doesn't seem like the losses, the close losses, have really affected that at all. And on top of that, I mean, we're even seeing it with Auburn. Auburn's issues are a lot worse than Alabama's, and they're still getting players to commit there. I feel like, in a way, that Coach DeBoer is going to have to get some of his own guys. As good as the players were that he inherited, there were a lot of guys that transferred out. Nick Saban alluded to that on game day. And so switching, from the Saban guys to the DeBoer guys, as scary as it is for me after I've seen Saban recruit great players for years, is something that could help this program.
Yeah, I think so. And I think the recruiting element definitely plays a role in this, right? As we, close out the year, I think that there was a lot of discussion on DeBoer's ability to recruit. That was the first question so many people had. I remember standing in this parking lot, literally, as Coach DeBoer entered for the first time. And I swear the fans even then were like, is this guy going to be able to recruit the South? And he's proving that. He has a great staff. Like, I enjoy getting that accessibility window into these assistants. They're incredible. They are engaging. And I Courtney Morgan, I mean, leave it right there. Courtney Morgan, he has it down to a science. I think also what's important to hear is a few players were asked about Kalen DeBoer's demeanor, if anything has changed in the last 6 weeks. They were all quick to say no. And they were also all quick to say, that's why you love a guy like Coach DeBoer. His demeanor has not changed. And some do not like that. We've talked about it on the show before. Some do take that as weakness. Some want the headset throwing Nick Saban. I hear you. I get it. But that is not who Coach DeBoer is. And when you have these players reiterating week after week that he is the same guy and they love it, that should be good enough.
So what do you got going on this week? Are you back in Tuscaloosa? I know you'll be there Saturday.
Yep, I'll be there on Saturday, and I do think I'll be back here tomorrow for assistance. TBD on that, but more than likely we'll get to hear. And it changes every week, just like some insider information. Player and coach-wise, you can request players, but it's never guaranteed who you're going to get. So we kind of go into these things a little unsure, but it's always kind of a nice surprise to see what players lines up and what coaches we have. But with that being said, I should be back here tomorrow, and then on Saturday, of course, I will be here for the 2:30 kick. Some thought that would be the 11 a.m., but it's a 2:30, and we'll see what Missouri has to offer.
All right, EG, thanks for hanging out with us. And guys, thank you for being here. Don't forget that our show is brought to you by mybookie.ag. Use that promo code next round, just like on my hat here. Next round to double your initial deposit. Now is a great time, not just with football, but you got the NFL and you got college basketball about to crank up. Bama is, depending on what poll you're looking at, in the top 5, and they have one of the best teams, maybe Nate Oates' most talented team, that'll hit the hardwood for real here really soon. So take advantage of that. The NBA coming back, hockey's rolling, all that at mybookie.ag. And covercrimson.com, that's where we're at on that message board, talking about this season, getting together and having a good time over there as well. Clint Lamb, Stacy Blackwood, and our entire crew. I see EG's on there some as well. So you need to do it. $1. That deal ends on Sunday. And if you do the annual subscription right now, we'll send you the Cover Crimson t-shirt. So that's part of that. So you get your t-shirt when you sign up. Thanks for being a part of what we're doing here, guys. And we will talk to you again soon.